Welcome to Practice English Conversations. Are you ready to practice your English and become more fluent? Let's get started.
Hi, David. How are you today?
Hi, Jessica. I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
I'm good, thanks. I was just reading the newspaper this morning and thought about how important it is to stay informed. I usually read a few articles before I start my day. Do you have a daily news habit?
Yes, I do. I always check the news on my phone as soon as I wake up. I like to read both online news and the printed newspaper when I have time. It helps me know what is happening in the world.
That's great. I prefer the printed newspaper because I like the feel of the paper and the layout of the articles. But I also use my tablet for news updates during lunch. It is very convenient.
I understand. I sometimes read the printed news at home, and then later I check online updates on my phone. I like the BBC and Reuters for international news. What are your favorite news sources?
I enjoy reading the local newspaper for community news and also a few online sites like CNN and The Guardian. I think local news is important because it tells me what is happening in my city.
I agree. Local news keeps me informed about events around my neighborhood, like local festivals, school updates, or road changes. I also like to see opinion pieces and editorials in my local paper.
Yes, the editorials are interesting. They give a personal view on current events. I sometimes discuss those opinions with my friends. It is a good way to learn different perspectives.
Absolutely. I often share interesting articles with my family. For example, I recently read an article about climate change and local efforts to reduce pollution. It made me think about how we can help our environment.
That sounds very important. I read a similar article. I believe that knowing about current events, especially local issues, can help us make better decisions and be more active in our community.
Exactly. I try to learn a little each day. When I read news about technology, politics, or even sports, I feel more connected with the world. It also helps me practice my English.
I agree. Reading the news is a great way to improve language skills. I sometimes note down new words or phrases that I do not know, and I look them up later. It helps me learn.
That is a good idea, Jessica. I do that too. I keep a small notebook and write down words like economy, innovation, or policy. Then I practice using them in sentences.
Yes, learning new vocabulary is one of the best parts of reading the news. It not only keeps you informed, but also improves your language. Do you usually read about a specific topic?
I try to read a mix of topics. I like technology news because I am interested in new gadgets, but I also read about health and education. It gives me a balanced view of the world.
That is interesting. I like to focus on local culture and community events. I read about new restaurants opening, local sports events, and sometimes even local art exhibitions.
Local culture is very important. I find that it helps me understand my community better. When I read about local events, I sometimes decide to attend a concert or a public meeting.
Yes, and sometimes the news makes me feel inspired. I remember reading about a charity event in my city where people raised money for a good cause. It made me want to volunteer.
That is wonderful, Jessica. Positive news stories are very uplifting. I also enjoy reading about people who overcome challenges. It gives me hope and motivates me to work harder in my own life.
I feel the same. Sometimes I read about new scientific discoveries or educational projects, and it excites me about the future. The news can be very powerful in changing our mood.
I agree. It can also be a little overwhelming at times. There are many negative stories, but I try to balance them by reading positive news. I believe it is important to see both sides of the story.
That's true. I sometimes choose to read only the morning news for important updates and then focus on positive stories later in the day. It helps me start my day with a clear mind.
I like that strategy. I also sometimes read a weekly digest that summarizes the major events. It is less stressful and still keeps me informed.
A digest is very helpful, especially when you have a busy schedule. I use an app that gives me a short summary of the news. It is very convenient when I am on the go.
Yes, mobile apps for news are very useful. They allow you to stay updated without spending too much time reading long articles.
And sometimes I watch video news clips on my phone. They are very clear and easy to understand. I like watching a short report about current events before I start my work.
I do that too. Video clips are good for a quick update. They show you images and footage of what is happening, and it makes the news more real.
It is amazing how technology has changed our news habits. In the past, people read only printed newspapers, but now we have many ways to get news quickly.
Absolutely. I sometimes compare the printed newspaper with the online news. I find that the online version is updated throughout the day, which is very helpful when I want the latest information.
Yes, and sometimes I like to read the printed version for a deeper understanding. The layout and design of a newspaper can make the information easier to remember.
That is very true. I feel that both formats have their benefits. Printed newspapers are good for slow, focused reading, while online news is good for quick updates.
I also believe that discussing news with friends can help us understand it better. I often talk about the news with my classmates and share our opinions on events.
I agree, Jessica. Conversation about current events is very important. It helps us learn different perspectives and form our own opinions.
Exactly. When I share my thoughts on a new policy or a scientific discovery, I feel that I am part of the conversation. It makes me feel more engaged in the world.
That is a good feeling. I sometimes ask my friends, "What do you think about this news?" And we discuss it. It is like a small debate, and it makes me think deeper about the topics.
I enjoy those discussions. They remind me that even if we have different views, we can learn from each other and respect each other's opinions.
Yes, respectful conversation is very important. I believe that by sharing our thoughts on the news, we can grow as individuals and as a community.
Thank you for this conversation, David. Talking about our daily news reading habits makes me appreciate the different ways we can stay informed and learn every day.
Thank you, Jessica. I enjoyed our chat very much. It is nice to share our favorite sources and ideas. I hope we can continue these discussions in the future.
Definitely, David. Let's keep in touch and maybe plan a time to discuss the news over coffee sometime soon.
That sounds like a great idea, Jessica. I'll send you a message, and we can set a time that works for both of us.
Perfect. Have a wonderful day, David, and happy reading.
You too, Jessica. Take care and goodbye.
Goodbye, David.
Great job practicing with us today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next English conversation. See you in the next video. Keep practicing and stay confident.